Ever since Valve posted this video on Twitter and shortly afterwards updated the game to include fixes for bugs related to movement, I've been trying to figure out what they actually changed. From what I can tell, pretty much nothing, but as it turns out, this wasn't even close to what they were really working on when they claimed to be taking movement seriously. The June 29th update addresses pretty much all of the concerns the community has had about movement when compared to CSGO. The hard part of trying to compare movement across versions, or even across tick rates, is that even if you run the same exact sequence of inputs multiple times on the same version, there can be massive differences. The script does not realize when something's happened in the game, where an exact same peak, for example, takes slightly longer. You won't be conscious of it either, but you'll still make the adjustment. This appears to be a lesser concern in CS2 after the new update, but then again, I may have just gotten lucky. It seems like, rather counterintuitively, the problem thus far has been that thanks to subticks, the movement is too precise. On a 128 tick server, since the game state is updated only on a game tick, whenever you'd start moving, the initial velocity was always 9.24. On a subtick server, this initial velocity could be any number between 0 and 9. This makes acceleration smoother, but because of that, it also feels slower. This is also a concern when trying to hit a B-hop. On a subtick server, the narrow window and the precision required makes it too difficult to perform reliably.
I felt as though my B-hops were pretty inconsistent sometimes, and it was a bit harder to hit a perfect B-hop.
This all seems to be fixed in the update. The fact that Valve has gotten 128 tick movement working on what is effectively a 64 tick server shows us how powerful this new subtick system really is.
I mean, it feels all the same as CSGO, there's nothing different.
I realize a lot of people have grown to love the number 128 over the years, for very good reasons to be fair, but I'd like to take a crack at putting your minds at ease about the scary 64 number we're likely to be seeing a lot of in CS2. Whenever the tick rate debate comes up, many people like to refer back to a video Threadless Philip made, in which he went over some test results where players tried to guess what tick rate a server was running at. As was pointed out in the video, this test's purpose was to see whether the average player could tell the difference. But the takeaway from that video has largely been that 64 tick seems to be enough for most players. Like the top comment for the video states, Valve could just make netgraph always show fake 128 tick rate in matchmaking when real tick rate is 64, and everyone would be happy. I wouldn't. I would die the window every round. I don't believe whether or not players can tell the difference should be taken into account when considering the merits of 128 tick servers. I already touched on grenade lineups being affected, but I didn't go into why. Thankfully, I don't need to, because this guy does a pretty good job at explaining it.
The blue part is a 64 tick server. The green part, 128. The 128 tick server is able to update the game twice as fast as the 64 tick server. The movement speed down here is a simple way of showing how fast the player is moving when performing a jump throw script. Now keep in mind, jump throwing in CSGO will not give you the same exact speed through the entire jump. There are some very small sudden moments of the jump where the movement speed is simply faster. Here, where it's going darker, is where the player's movement speed is faster. And when it's lighter, over here, the movement speed is slowing down. So the fastest movement speed you can get during a jump throw is here. But wait. This means that the only way for us to get to the fastest movement speed possible is on a 128 tick server. The fastest speed with a 64 tick server is here.
That's right, but the key thing to note here is that while 128 tick servers are a solution to this problem, it's a very inefficient one. Updating game state twice as often just to sometimes receive that extra piece of important information is a huge waste of resources, and that's where subticks come in. Counter-Strike 2 servers look exactly like the blue part here, but each update takes into account everything happening between each tick. In a 128 tick server, the jump throw happens here. In a CS2 server, the jump throw happens here, but the game will act like it happened here. As far as throwing nades is concerned, 64 ticks is perfectly fine, since the slightly increased response time is negligible to say the least. There's still the concern of positional accuracy. If we remove all network latency and just focus on the tick rate, is 128 tick better? Yes. But is it meaningfully so, if at each tick the information is precise regardless of tick rate? I doubt it. Considering all of this, is there perhaps an argument to be made for at least the professional scene still getting 128 tick servers? Maybe, but is there really any point in doing that?
This is not gonna kill Faceit and them, because Faceit and them are gonna have the 128 tick servers. when the community cells come out.
Since subticks remove all gameplay anomalies that were present at different tick rates in CSGO, the only thing we're really debating now is the frequency of these abstract lines on the graph. In CS2, as long as the tick rate isn't below 64, it really should be fine.
Will 120 tick be available sometime in the future?
Great
They actually
question,
answered on that, and I think the answer was really good. And they were actually showing us how many players are using good computers. That number is scary to see. It's not even many. It was ridiculous. They were actually counting out, it was like from 0 to 30 FPS was like 60% of players. It was
Same.
like a ridiculous amount. And they was answering like, when they're using 128 tick, for example, your computer is not even responding well to it. So
Right.
that's why one of the reasons they have in 64 still. And I think that's a solid reason, because there's still so many people. They were saying the most people playing matchmaking are those ones.
This was all the way back in 2013. In 2018, one of the developers said on Twitter, the problem is that most players will be disadvantaged playing on 128 tick because they can't keep up. So we'd need to segment the players, which would lead to longer queue times. Still may be worth it though. CSGO is popular around the world. Almost half of our players play on systems and internet connections that are not new or particularly fast. One of the things we've not heard much about yet, but know is coming with Counter-Strike 2, is Valve's attempt to make third-party pugging services such as Faceit obsolete. They're tasked with making sure people with dodgy internet connections and bad hardware can still play the game while also having to cater to the people who want to go pro. Splitting up these queues from the get-go could be one way to do it, and as long as the servers are stable, they can be 256 ticks for all I care. But truth be told, I would like to see a 64 tick CS2 given a proper go for casuals, for Faceit nerds, and pro players on LAN.
More tick rate means the computer needs more power to calculate, which means more lag and lower performance on slower devices and older devices.
We were all trying to guess the tick rate. They wouldn't tell us.
Valve were very good because they wouldn't
tell
give
us
us
what tick
everything.
rate it was.
Even though they were letting us play it, they wouldn't tell us a lot of things
Dude,
on
they
purpose.
kept
saying so.
What tick rate does
do you
it feel
think?
like?
Oh man, like what am I meant to say to this?
Valve has purposely kept the number 64 hidden from us. They never disclosed the tick rate when asked. They disabled netgraph. When they added back netgraph, it was an actual graph this time.
That third graph.
So green means good. All right, cool.
And it makes sense that they did all of that. At this point, 128 ticks has become a misguided marketing gimmick rather than a meaningful benefit. Look at how much Valorant is struggling to keep up with their promise of 128 tick servers for everyone. While Riot is desperately putting out fires, trying to make a game that would probably be fine at 32 ticks, run at 128, Counter-Strike 2 is out here, chilling, wasting 2 times less resources, and still it has faster and more precise movement and gunplay. In conclusion, if Counter-Strike 2's subtick system plays out anything like in my delusions, if we are ever unfortunate enough to have another prolonged online era, it will at least be worth talking about.